everybody, and welcome back to Robert's Reviews. Today we have another Leonardo DiCaprio movie for you. We are in 2002, so we're really kicking it off, and in his late career he didn't do a lot of movies, so we really only have a couple more months left, once a week, and we'll be done with every Leonardo DiCaprio movie that has ever been made. And today, we talk about Catch Me If You Can. Catch Me If You Can was released in 2002. It was written by Jeff Nathanson and directed by Steven Spielberg, which kind of surprised me because, I watched the trailer for the movie and I honestly did not expect this to be a Spielberg movie at all. I love Steven Spielberg. This doesn't seem like something that he would do, but he did, and it was pretty solid. So essentially, if you don't know what happened in this movie, first of all, it is on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, you can watch this movie. I would recommend it. It is on Netflix. It is actually, I think, the 7th most watched movie on Netflix this week, which isn't the week that you're watching. But when I'm watching, it's like top 10 movies. So it's up there. So if you have Netflix, you should give it a watch. But if you don't know what it's about, essentially what happens, it's about this kid who basically doesn't have anything. He doesn't have any money, and then his parents divorce, and then he runs away. And he decides he's going to make a living on his own by forging checks, which is fraud. And what he would do is he would forge checks, and he would get really, really good at it, and then he pretends to be different people. Like, first he pretends to be an airplane pilot. He's like, oh, that'd be fun. So then he decides he's going to pretend to do that, and he, basically lies and makes his way into being a pilot. And then he's a pilot. Then he decides he's like, oh, it'd be fun, a doctor. And then he becomes a doctor, and then becomes a lawyer. It's a lot of crazy, stuff going on, and he's wicked smart. He could do anything with his life that he wanted to. He just chooses to live on the back burner and be a liar and a fraudulent person. But what happens, essentially, is that there's this other person, Carl, who is working with the FBI, and it is his goal to capture him. So he is trying to capture him and catch him in the act, essentially. And eventually he does, and he puts him in jail for, 14 years, something like that, 12 years. And then, a few years into his sentence, they realize that he could be really helpful, and because he's really smart. So they take him in, and they have him work for the FBI in the check fraud department, which is really cool. A really cool ending to a story that, honestly, I thought was pretty good. I didn't really know where it was going. I honestly would have been okay if they just threw him in jail and that was the end of it. But then they were like, oh, but what if he works for the FBI? And honestly, solid. And this is based on a true story. The person's still alive, or at least it was in 2002, that actually did this, and he said that the movie is about 80% accurate. So that's pretty good considering it's an adaptation off of a real life thing, and a lot of times they're very not true. One thing that Leonardo DiCaprio does enjoy doing is playing, more biographical films, like The Aviator, for instance, and this film, and Titanic, technically. He likes that kind of thing where he can base his character off of real-life characters, which is great. I love it when people do that, especially when it's a really good actor like Leonardo DiCaprio. So let's talk about some acting first, and then I can talk more about the plot. So first, Leonardo DiCaprio as Frank Abagnale Jr. First off, I can't decide if he looks too young or too old for the part. He doesn't look like he's the right age. I think he looks... Alright, so he is known for looking too young, right? So, in previous films, particularly The Man in the Iron Mask, he looked way too young to play the part that he was put in. In this one, I think he might look too old in some parts. His jawline, in particular, is starting to grow out more. And if you look at a younger picture of Leonardo DiCaprio, it's very, thin like that. Obviously, I have a pretty thick face, but then, he gets these, huge jawbones when he, gets older. And he's starting to develop those in this movie. This might be the last movie that I think I would consider him being, looking young in. He almost looks young, but I think he might look a little too old to be playing the part earlier in the film. In the late parts of the film, he looks fine. He looks just like I would imagine him to. So that was interesting. Performance-wise, however, fantastic. I enjoyed watching him. I like that he had a lot of fun with this movie. You can really tell. I don't know for sure because I've never read anything about it, but he does seem like he enjoys playing his part a lot, which is always really good. I feel like he just has fun with everything he does. He just seems like a really solid actor who has a lot of fun backstage and off screen, I should say. And really enjoyed watching his performance in this, particularly because it seemed like he was having a lot of fun. Tom Hanks as Carl Hanratty. So he is the FBI detective. And Tom Hanks is somebody I haven't actually watched a lot of. I may be doing a series on him in the future, probably am. But I never fully watched him in a live action thing. I've seen parts of Forrest Gump, but I haven't seen the whole thing yet, which is unbelievable to me. I don't know why I haven't done that yet, but I haven't. But in general, I haven't studied his performance or anything like that. With Leonardo DiCaprio, I can study patterns and I can see what he does in different movies and how he does them differently, which is fine. I'll talk about that in a Robert Slots video when I am done with every one of them. So it'll probably come out in April, maybe end of March, depending on how fast I get through these things. But I haven't discovered patterns in Tom Hanks yet because I haven't watched anything from him. So this is the first one that I've really actually paid attention to him in a film. And he's really good. I don't know what's going on with his accent. I don't know if he always has an accent or if it's just he decided to use one for this movie, but I felt a little uncomfortable, I think. I don't know what it was. For me, it was just hard to listen to him talk sometimes. But acting-wise, he did really great. He pretends like he's not on his side, but really he is with Frank, which confuses me a little bit because he is an FBI detective. I think he might have influenced the beginning of the movie too much with the end of the movie. He let that kind of influence decisions a little bit too much. He's a little bit too nice to Frank in the beginning of the movie that it's almost weird that he's an FBI detective. But I think he views him more as a son, which is interesting. And I enjoyed that almost kind of sort of father-son thing we had going on there. Overall, a really solid performance by Tom Hanks. I'm excited to watch more of him because I've heard he's fantastic. I just haven't had time to do it. But once I do Leonardo DiCaprio and Steve Carell, I will have 2 openings for more things. Also, the DCEU, I'm starting that next week. That's going to be pretty short because they haven't done a lot, and it's going to take me forever to watch the movies, though, because they're all 3 hours long, but I'm going to do it. So probably about April, we're going to have 3 new series, so look forward to those. Christopher Walken as Frank Abagnale Sr. So Christopher Walken's great. He was actually in a play that was by Martin McDonagh called A Beheading in Spokane, which is a really good play, and I watched some clips of him in that. It was really good. So I haven't strictly watched a lot of Christopher Walken in particular, mainly because he's on screen. You just kind of don't really pay attention to him as much as you think you do. But overall, I think he was great. I think he's better in a more menacing part. He was playing a dad in this one, and not a very solid or scary dad. He was a regular old dad. I honestly don't think he was particularly fantastic, but he didn't distract me from the movie, so I can't give him negative feedback, but I just think he was fine. I don't think there was any problems with it. Amy Adams as Brenda Strong. I don't know if I've seen Amy Adams or anything. I know she's in the DCEU, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But she's really good in this movie. I really enjoyed her performance. She plays the girlfriend that she meets Frank at some point along the journey when he becomes a doctor. And she plays this nurse, and she's really quiet, kind of kept to herself for a while, and then eventually proceeds to come out and then is engaged to Frank, and then sells him to the FBI, which is smart on her part, but also kind of sad because it was a nice relationship. I wanted to see it flutter. I wanted more of that. Honestly, not that I think that it would have. I think it would have actually hindered the movie if we had more of that. But I would like to know what have actually happened. But yeah, it would have distracted the movie because we don't need love interests in this movie. I think we had one, and it was Amy Adams, and she was only on screen for maybe 20 minutes, but I think she did really, really phenomenal, and really is really good. I'm really excited to watch her in the DCEU starting next week. But overall, really solid movie. I think just a couple problems that I had were the plot just didn't. Alright, first of all, they opened the film with the weirdest thing ever. They're like, oh, it's a game show, and you're trying to guess who's the real Frank Abagnale Jr., which was dumb, I think. I don't think it was very smart, mainly because it went through exactly what we're going to do now, and then we see him get caught by the detective, and at that point, it felt like, well, I'm even watching the movie then, if we already know he's going to get caught. But it wasn't bad, because then we catch up, and then we go beyond it, so it's not the whole thing, I guess. I didn't really know what to expect for sure, particularly with that opening sequence, but I don't think it was bad. I just think it was a little bit confusing, and a lot of the plot jumps, I don't even know how old he was by the end of the film, which I guess is maybe kind of the point. I'm not sure. But overall, with all the performances and all of the fantastic storyline, the storyline was really fun. I enjoyed watching it. It's a good movie, and I'm going to give it an A. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys are having a good week. We got 3 more videos coming out this week. We got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so tune in for those. Next week we are officially, let me double check that. Yes, next week we are officially on Monday starting the DCEU. So we're going to have 5 series running continuously. On Mondays, I'm going to do a DCEU film. On Tuesdays, I'm going to do Leonardo DiCaprio. Wednesdays, MCU. Thursdays, Steve Carell. And 5 is a request. I will update... Alright, so this comes out when? This comes out on the 19th. So by now, you'll know if I'm doing a series on WandaVision. I know WandaVision comes out once a week now. So I may or may not be doing a series on Saturdays, just discussing some of my thoughts about the previous episode of WandaVision. I haven't decided. It also might come out on Fridays. I don't know. You'll know now. I don't know, though, because this is past me talking to future me. But I might do that. I probably will do that. I'm not entirely sure. We'll see. But, I mean, really, that's it. That's all I have for you today. And then that's going to end the month, really. We have just next week, and then that's the end of January. January went by really fast, so wow. But anyway, that's really all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. As always, keep watching movies and television, stay educated, and I'll see you guys in the next video.